Joining me today from Atlanta, Mr. Clea Halfcock.
How you doing, Mr. Branch?
It's been a long time. I was just looking at the last time. I'm sure we've talked since then, but the last time you were on the program was January 15th, 2011. So that's 6 years.
Wow. Yeah. A lot changed.
Yeah. Let's see. That was show 50, a show called Are You Living Your Dream? And then you were on for show 39, which was October 30th, 2010. So that's been a long time, man. 6 years. You came to my apartment in Bethesda, and remember we went to have Indian food.
Right.
I remember your Bible in your car. You would always keep that with you as you were traveling.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yep, always behind my driver's seat.
Mm-hmm. And so when you went to FAMU, what did you study there? What was your major there?
Business administration for my BS, and then I went back and got another BS in graphic design, and then I went to Howard to get my MFA in design.
Wow, so you got 3 degrees.
Yep.
Wow, that's great, bro. Congratulations. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite an achievement.
It was the process.
So you have now had 2 HBCU experiences, one at FAM and then at HU.
I wouldn't change those experiences at all. I think that they both groomed me into being the man that I've become. And I've had great support. And like with my professors, both at FAM and at Howard, have put me in places to give me opportunities to go to the next levels. And I probably wouldn't have had that access on my own. It would have been a little bit more work. So if it wasn't for that experience, I don't think that I would be where I am today. And I'm eternally grateful for it.
Mm-hmm. Today's show is about education and the importance and the power of a black male educator. Your father was a teacher. Can you talk about that? And can you share with us your father's teaching journey?
Yeah. My father was a history teacher, geography teacher, sociology, and psych. Mm-hmm. He was a high school teacher, grew up in it. My grandmother was a social studies teacher. My grandfather was a math teacher and a vice principal of
his mother.
My dad and my aunt. Yes, his mother was a social studies, middle school social studies teacher. My grandfather was a math teacher and then became the vice principal of my dad's and my aunt's high school.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and then my aunt also was a science teacher.
And that would have been your father's sister?
Yeah.
So all in that side of the family, your father's whole nuclear family, they were all educators.
They were all educators.
Wow. What a legacy. At what point did you discover how many other black male educators were in your school? When did that become clear to you?
Our school is predominantly African American. During our first initial staff meeting, it was during the planning period, the week before school started, and we got to see everybody there, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of black educators here at this middle school, a lot.
So let's talk about some of those brothers that are teaching in your school, educating in your school right now. Can you describe, like, are these mostly brothers in their 20s, or are they young brothers right out of college or right out of higher education? Or have they been in the system for 10, 15, 20 years? Are there some older brothers in there? Just describe the average black male educator in your school.
The average black educator in my school have been teaching for a minute. The minimum is probably about 5 to 6 years. A lot of the male teachers who are there have been with the school for years. That was like one of the first jobs they got probably coming out of college, and they just continued to stay. Most of them around my age are probably early to mid-30s, and then you have those who have been there for a minute who are late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
So they get a broad range of different black male experiences and personalities, too, and age groups. So you hit those who can identify with where they are from a youth perspective and are more culturally relevant, and then you get those who are more traditionalist. You get those who kind of grew up, like myself, in the hip-hop era, so things that are kind of going on in the youth and subculture now we're familiar with that. And then you have those who come from a different, more of a stricter background, and they give more of a stern perspective or more of a paternal perspective. So I think our students are getting a good balance of different personalities, but we all work well together, and they see that. So,
on any given day when you stand in front of your classroom and look out at your students, and I'm specifically want to focus on the young black men who are in your classes, your students, what are you seeing in that particular population? Are you seeing learning disabilities? Are you seeing inability to really read well? Like, what are personality types? Can you tell who's coming from a dysfunctional home? The lazy student? What are you seeing with the black boys in your classrooms specifically?
You see everything that you had just mentioned, and that's prevalent, but you also see that glimmer in their eye that I want to be more than that. I just don't know how. Or I'm scared to kind of step out. Especially when you're working in the arts, I'm scared to kind of step out because this is different than what I'm accustomed to. But then I get another subset of students who are very comfortable with who they are. They're like, I like playing video games. I like Minecraft. I'm in the 6th grade. I enjoy this. This is who I am. And they embrace that, and they're very knowledgeable of who they want to be. Like, one of my students who I really am just enamored with just told me one day he wants to own a reptile sanctuary. Just adamant about this, unflinching. He's very comfortable with that. And I see a lot of my students are very comfortable in what they want to do, depending on how non-traditional it may be, because of, YouTube and social media and the internet. They've been exposed to this at an early age, so that a lot of them kind of have that idea versus, you don't really have to plant that seed. You can do great things. You have the ability and capability of doing it, and just kind of making them understand that. So that can be a bit of a struggle, having the students, especially our young black male students, believe in themselves in that capacity. But as an educator, I try to lead by example. And I'm not the only one. And like the way that our school system is, they're constantly surrounded by things of higher learning and ideals that are greater than what they may see on a day-to-day.
Working with the same students every day, day after day, week after week, month after month, do you develop and do you have now an intuitive sense of those students that need and want a little bit more of your attention for whatever their reasons are, that are gravitating towards you?
Yes. And sometimes you run across them trying to resist. I don't want your attention, but I want your attention. I'm going to do everything I can to make you not want to give me attention, but I really desperately want your attention. So it's kind of having to read through that as well. Because for many of them, that's the only way that they know how to communicate. They'll come to me and their tone will be elevated. And I'm like, why are you yelling at me? I'm right here. This is how I talk. Well, no, you're not going to talk to me that way. Bring it down. Let's focus. Tell me what you need. And then they bring it down, but they're so accustomed to kind of going there. That's their typical norm. So when you kind of come at them left, yeah, that's cool, but we're not going to dialogue that way. Then they find their ways kind of like converting back. And once you gain their trust, then they become more receptive to what you have to say.
Let's talk about that, because that's the key word, trust, gaining their trust. How does, and I know this is a generalization, but how do you go about gaining the trust, particularly of the students who you feel are resisting you?
I have to be true to myself, and I have to have a good read of my students. I always tell them kind of like what was imposed onto me. It's like, you might not have to agree with what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to stifle your voice. Here's your opportunity to express it. By giving them that opportunity and allowing them to find their voice, then the trust is gained. And I know that they may not trust me, but I will put you in a place to where you can facilitate that. Maybe I'm not the guy, but our black male guidance counselor is the perfect guy that can help you to transition that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of us having this tension, I'm going to just be like, all right, let me put you in connect with him.
Mm-hmm.
Let me let you talk to this coach over here. And by them realizing that you're not taking it personal because they're not feeling you in a roundabout way, trust is being gained.
So sixth grade is
So
what, 12
I've
years
had to
old,
learn
11, 12 years old?
11, 12 is sixth grade.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, as someone who doesn't have biological children of my own, I can imagine myself becoming attached to these little minds that I'm working with every day. And I would imagine that at some point, knowing my personality, that I would begin to feel like this is a calling for me. Like I would feel myself being called into that educational experience with them. What has this experience teaching these sixth graders, these young minds, molding and educating them, what has it done for your own sense of your own calling in life?
I feel in many ways that as far as my calling is concerned, I feel that I am here to really help to foster creativity and to help my students find their voice. Working with them and having a one-on-one. There have been several times where I've had to be in parent-teacher conferences and the students are getting different opinions from their teachers in front of their parents. And I've kind of had to be that voice, the reason for them. Like, yes, or even be their voice. Like where everybody else may be saying they're doing all these things, I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, that may be true, but their potential to do this is here. This is what they're capable of doing. This is what they've done. And basically kind of being their advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that all children are bad. I just think that sometimes kids don't feel that they have a voice and they're being heard. And they don't feel that people understand them. In some ways, that can be true. But I think if you just kind of just allow them, just kind of fall back, really, really listen to what they got to say, they'll start revealing stuff about themselves. And then you can use that to help them to foster a behavior that's going to want to be successful. So that's things that I'm learning working as an art teacher in the sixth grade. The more that I'm there at my school, I'm realizing that I'm making those connections.
Mm-hmm.
And that's motivating me to want to continue to do more.
So have you had the experience where the last student has exited your class for the day and you've sat at your desk and thought to yourself, I need to do this, this, and this to be better at this? What have you had to do and think and prepare within yourself to be better at what you're doing in the classroom every day?
Yes, I do always circle back to, okay, what were successes, what I could have done differently, how can I approach this? I'm working with millennials, so I got to keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? How can we incorporate technology into what we do and then get them to go back to the basics?
Mm-hmm. I sent you a link to a brother who I was listening to this morning, Dr. Christopher Emden.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something in a speech that I was listening to that really stayed with me. And it not only applies to educators and students in the classroom, but it applies to the old guard in general, particularly the black old guard in whatever genre, for lack of a better word, or whatever milieu or discipline or occupation you're in. He said,
are we as educators going to be humble enough to create spaces to allow young people to teach us what we need to do? It's not an arbitrary phenomenon. Because y'all can say, yeah, we're going to make them teach us. But then you get to that classroom and you tell them to shut up. It doesn't work that way. I'm talking about institutions creating spaces to allow young folks to be able to take the helm of the instruction within the institution, to inform the teacher about the nuances of their culture, to be able to tell the teacher, stop ripping out my teeth and just let me be. And unless you're creating those spaces in schools, and it's not about black and brown youth as well, it's also about youth that we've diagnosed and labeled as not being able to achieve in schools. You're talking about young people that we call disabled, who have much ability, right? It's about young folks in Appalachia that we say they're so poor they can't read.
and I think that's pretty brilliant if you can get down to the essence of what he's really saying there. I remember when I worked at the Washington Urban League and I was pretty young. That was one of the first big jobs that I had. I was 22 years old when I went there, and I ended up being the communications director. And that was with all these old heads who had been working in civil rights for years and years and years and years. And here I am, the young buck. I was still in college when I was working at that job. And I just remember like feeling like they just are not open to hearing really anything I would have to say. But when I did get it in, I could see their expectations of me rising. But it was hard to get that input in with them. And I think many times people in positions of authority, particularly people of color, because we haven't been in those positions for generations and generations and generations. When we get those positions of authority, we kind of go in as if we know it all, instead of allowing the younger generation, the new guard, if you will, to teach us some things that we would be wise to learn. What do you think about that idea?
I always tell my students, I don't know all. You discover something, let's figure it out together. Let's learn it together. I think there's a balance of the two. I do feel that sometimes being older, because you know what it took to get there, you try your best as an educator to prevent those pitfalls. Now, is it always fair that, like, I know I'm always right, I'm right, this is the way that it is? No, I don't feel that that's a great way of teaching. I think that teaching should be collaborative. I do feel that there's a certain level of, you should understand the basics, you should understand what you're doing, or what I was taught, you should know the rules so you can learn how to break them.
See, and the way I took what he said is that you as the instructor, you as the educator, when you walk in there tomorrow, you do have the information and you do have the life experience. But what you don't necessarily have is the essence of how this particular energetic being called a child in front of you needs to be taught and needs to experience and needs to receive that information. You may have some ideas about that. So providing space for them to teach you how to teach them, I think, is really, really important. And I don't think enough teachers do that kind of deep dive to get to that space where they're actually receiving on that level really important data and manna from the student, so that they can then go around and figure out ways to get that information that they're holding that the student doesn't have over to them in the way that they can receive it. Do you feel what I'm saying? That's how I took what he said.
No, I totally, and I understand what your interpretation of it, and I understand where he was coming from. I do feel that, and I've just through conversations with fellow educators, many of them are receptive to that. But there's so many other avenues that they have to do with making sure that students are learning and preparing for standardized testing.
Right. Teaching to the test.
Teaching to the test. So I think that takes away a lot of time. And because you have such a limited time, it's like, okay, let's get this done. And I'm not saying that that's a great way of teaching.
That's just the reality, though. With a limited amount of time, you got to do what you got to do. I totally get that.
Right. You may want to do that. Your time doesn't always allow that to happen. You're trying to facilitate a need, and then sometimes your students are trying to express themselves, but they're not really fully capable of doing it, and you got to read through the lines and still get what you need to get done.
Mm-hmm. Because as the educator, you're being held accountable for their ability to pass those tests.
Right, and that's important. As an art teacher, I've incorporated language, math, and science and technology into what I do so that they're able to go into this test. So I definitely understand that the student's voice should always be heard. And I do feel that nobody is above learning. And if you ever get to that point, then I think that you're doing a disservice to not only the students, but to yourself, because you're preventing growth, you're preventing change, your work becomes stagnant, and then the students become disengaged. So I do agree with what the gentleman was saying. It's just all about striking that balance, and that's the tightrope that educators have to walk.
Well, I'm running out of time. I appreciate, we could go on talking about that. At least I could for a long, long time. What's your sort of bottom line, or the thing that you want our listeners to know today about what it is, what the reality is of being a black male educator in a predominantly black and brown school in 2017 in College Park, Georgia? What is that reality? How would you bottom line that reality?
That's a good question. The reality is it can be a difficult job because you have to be all things to all of your students. You have to be a positive role model. You have to be a counselor. You have to be an educator. You have to be a friend. You have to be a disciplinarian. You have to wear many, 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 many hats. And you have to successfully swap out those hats quickly and still be there to engage your students to learn. I think for me, as a black male educator, I always strive to be a positive role model. Even if they don't look at me as being that, I've realized after the fact from students who I've taught on the collegiate level that just me being there and my different nuances of my personality with teaching, they've taken and they ran with. Mm-hmm. And they, in turn, have decided to do things from me teaching at BAM, where I taught one of my students how to tie his first tie. Never tied a tie ever in his life. He came doing a professional critique. You know, I told him, you got to wear a tie. And he never had to do it. But now that's something he knows how to do. And you're always constantly being watched. They're always taking things from you. It's always testing boundaries to see if you're going to still be there for them. But when you reach them, that's the reward. When they have that aha moment, that's the reward. When they feel proud about what they do, that's the reward. Or when they become star student of the week in my class and they receive a brown bag full of goodies that they can draw on to enter into a contest or even a bigger prize, they are clamoring for that. Low-key, they try to front like they don't like it, but they're secretly gunning for it. And that lets me know that I'm doing my job.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's my last question. Your path has taken you far and wide from the town where you grew up. And when you reflect on that, what do you think that says about you and your dreams and your ambition to be whatever it is that you're becoming in your life as a man?
I always knew that there was something bigger and greater than where I was from. I never thought that there was nothing wrong with growing up where I grew up. I think it was great. I've grown into the man that I've become as a result of growing up in a small town and then being exposed to different things. And I think that drives me to dream big, and then it also allows me to execute because I know what's out there, and it makes me go after it, and I have to figure out a way to get to where I want to be. Anybody who I've interacted with, I guess because I've always dreamed big and I shared that, they've always reminded me in a good way that you're one step ahead, you're one step closer. They're not surprised. We support you. You're definitely where you need to be to help others. You're the great person for that position because you're a positive role model. So a lot of people in my circle, even outside of my circle, have always been encouraging. It's been a good ride. I can't wait to see where my life is going to end up next.
Well, thank you for sharing all that today. I'm personally really proud of you. I just appreciate the journey that you've shared with me. It's really a blessing to hear. And then when I listen to you talk about your journey, it's just so clear to me that there's a man of purpose in there. And I think of all the things that I know about you, the thing that always stays with me is what we talked about earlier, how you always travel with your Bible. And that said more to me about your character and your values than probably anything else you've ever shared with me. It was right there. It showed the essence. It was like a revelation of who you really are. And that's what I appreciate the most about you, that there's a core value that is there, that is a part of you, that's unbreakable. And that's really what sustains each of us as we travel the journey that's set before us. So I appreciate you, brother. I'm glad you chose to share with me today.
Yeah, I just appreciate you and all the kind words that you just shared with me. You know, hearing that from a gentleman like yourself, it really resonates with me, and I'm humbled by it. So thank you very much for sharing your insights on me. I don't think people go about trying to live to other expectations, but it's always good to know that what you're trying to do on your day-to-day is being seen and being other people see it in you.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And congratulations on all of your success and your future successes.
Thank you.
You know, you allow, like I said, looking at individuals like yourself allowed me to know that it is capable to be done and it can be done and done well.
Thank you, brother.
So I've always valued that in you and our interactions. So thank you for
brother.
that. Find yourself to love.